Greetings, everyone. I'd like to talk to you now for a little bit about background checks. Background checks are certainly something that if you're going to go into a human services internship for this program, for this course eventually, you will be subjected to some kind of background check more than likely. I don't want to say that it's 100%. I don't want to say that it's each and every internship. But what I am going to say is that it's nearly universal. And these background checks, as you might imagine, are done on a variety of people for a variety of purposes, including whether they're looking for a regular job, whether it's full-time or part-time or relief, whether it's for something like an internship, or whether it's just for people that might be doing some volunteer work for the agency and things like that. Now, why are these background checks necessary? Well, certainly, hit the wrong button there. Certainly, it's for the protection of clients. If you're going to be in a situation where you'll be having access to clients in any way, obviously agencies need to protect them. Clients in many cases are very vulnerable, and so people need to make sure that those that are coming in contact with them are basically good people. So the protection of clients is certainly a big thing. Now, when we talk about background checks, what is it that we're actually talking about? We're talking about, at least in the Massachusetts system, things that go by the following acronyms, either CORI or SORI. And these represent first a criminal offense record investigation, or SORI is a sex offender registry inquiry. And what these two things are checking for is obviously different because the sex offender one is specifically for sex offenders. But the criminal background check, the CORI, as it's called in Massachusetts, is to just see if you have certain things in your background that might be some kind of impediment to you working with clients. We are not, in this case, at all talking about people that have speeding tickets on their record or unpaid parking fines or overdue library books or anything like that. Even interactions that you may have had with the police that didn't involve actual arrests and things, those would not show up on these background checks. But an awful lot of stuff does show up, and an awful lot of stuff shows up from your past. And that is where sometimes people get in trouble, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. But when you go through these background checks, what is it that might come up in terms of the report that the agency would get back on you? So first, let me say that most of what this whole system involves is discussed in terms of hiring. So even though you might not be looking for an actual job, they consider you, quote, being hired for an internship or a volunteer position and things like that. So the terminology that we talk about largely has to do with things like hiring. So when someone does a background check on you, very often what comes back is something that hits one of three main areas. The first area is something to do in the language that sounds like okay to hire. You're a clean record person. Whatever they might find in your background is okay, even if it's something fairly possibly negative. But basically what the reviewers are saying to the, quote, hirers are it's okay to hire this person. On the other end of the scale is something called probably mandatory no hire, meaning however much in the past this was, however you may have changed your life in the interim period. We have a lot of people in human services that come to human services because they had difficulties in their life in the past, and now they want to help people, and that's admirable and that's understandable. But some offenses that some people have on their record are going to make it mandatory for the person not to hire you, no matter how much you've changed, no matter how much they liked you in an interview and things like that. The report comes back mandatory no hire. And that's There's nothing you can do about that except move on to another place, perhaps. But in the middle of those things, in other words, in the middle of okay to hire and mandatory no hire, is something called discretionary. And this is a big, big deal for some people. So let me explain something here that's going to play into this whole thing. And again, a lot of what I say here doesn't apply to everyone. Quite honestly, the vast majority of people here are okay. That are looking for internships and stuff. But I do have to say this little rap to everyone so that everybody hears these things and we're all on the same page and things like that. So first and foremost, no one can do a background check on you without your written permission. So in every case, if you're going to be criminally background checked or checked for a sexual offense, or in some cases both, you are going to have to sign a form that they will give you. Now, this is a short presentation that you're listening to. There's a little bit more to come after this, but I am telling you that this one thing that I'm about to say to you is probably the most important thing that you need to hear from this. If you have anything in your background that may be a concern to these people, or if you think you might have something in your background that might be of a concern, you absolutely positively must disclose that while you are filling out that form. In other words, and you would do this in your own words, they're going to give you a form. On that form, you're going to have to put certain things like name, rank, and serial number. What's your name, what's your address. Some places ask for previous addresses and things like that so they can look you up better. You may or may not be asked for your social security number. You will be asked if you've had a previous name. If perhaps your name has changed now through marriage or divorce or something like that. So this is all standard stuff that's on this form. So what I am saying to you in no uncertain terms is that if you have something on your record, you need to tell them as you're passing that form back into them. You need to say something, and I want you to use your own words, but you need to say something like, look, I might have something that's going to come back here. I'm not sure. This was many years ago. This happened when I was a kid. I used to be drinking or doing drugs back then. I'm not that person. However you want to do that. And by the way, you want to have that little rap ready before you go in there so you're not stumbling all over you. I don't think you have to write it out on a script and read it, but I do think that you want to anticipate this happening and you want to come up with your little, 30-second explanation as to why there might be a problem. Anyway, you need to disclose that in any way you do. The reason why you need to disclose it is because of the following. If it comes back in that discretionary category, in other words, it's up to the people that are looking at you to hire you. If it comes back discretionary, but you have not disclosed, some agencies have a formal policy that says if you don't disclose, they're not going to take you anyway, no matter how much they like you. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is that some agencies think that if you don't say something, they think that you think that you're trying to get away with something. So in other words, if you don't disclose, they might be thinking, maybe it'll, the applicant, the student is thinking, well, maybe it'll slide through, or maybe it won't show up, or maybe it was so long ago it won't be on my record, or anything like that. I'm telling you, you absolutely positively have to disclose if you have something on your record that's going to impact these folks. Students have lost out on some good internships. In other words, the agency interviewer liked them a lot, understood that, whatever happened was in the past and things. But because they did not disclose, they were not allowed to take them. So I cannot stress that enough. Hence the important in capital letters, 2 exclamation points after it, you need to disclose. So I think you kind of get what that means. Now, let me go on here. If you come back with having some kind of background issue, I will say that you might have a limitation as to where you can go. There are certain offenses in certain people that are okay in one place and not okay in another place. It just all depends on the client and the level of offense and things like that. What they're looking for, by the way, is predominantly drug-related things, abuse situations, especially if it's abuse of an elder or a kid or somebody that's vulnerable, someone with a mental disability or something like that, and physical assault things. If you've been violent with people in some way and have been arrested for assault or something like that. So the fact of the matter is that if you have some of these things on your record, there still may be some places you can go, but you're going to be going to pick from a bucket that's certainly smaller than some other people. It's probably no different in terms of numbers of people that can only go to an internship if it's on a bus line because they don't have a car, or can only do something nights or weekends because they work full time. These are things that are going to limit your choices compared to other people. Now, I am honestly able to say, and I think I've been doing this for a number of years, that I've never not found an internship for a specific student. I've managed to place every single student over the past nearly 30 years now. But, some people it's been tough because they have things in their background. But there are places, there are situations where we can still get you placed. So what I would say is this. If you have something in your background, I would urge you, especially if I pick up on it, because you're going to have to submit a form. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But if you have something in your background, I would urge you to confidentially discuss it with me. By confidentially, I mean I would not disclose that with anyone else. I don't need to know all the gory details. Quite frankly, if you put something on your form that says that you have a problem, I may not even be contacting you. But I do want the right to have you discuss that with me, certainly if I ask. And you certainly have the opportunity to ask for my opinion on certain things if you do have some issues and stuff. Mind you, I'm not a lawyer or anything like that. I can't give you legal advice because there are things that you can do to seal your record and stuff like that. I'm not going to talk about that now. But again, the point is I would urge you to discuss it with me, especially if I contact you. You are not under any requirement to discuss it with me. That's optional on your part. So bottom line on this is that you will be having a form to submit to me electronically that's going to just capture a few short things. That form literally has just a few different items about a name and a phone number and things like that. But mostly it's going to ask you to declare yourself as one of two options. And I want you to look at the form carefully. I want you to read it carefully. And I do want you to make one check mark in one place or the other and read the words. But what I'm going to say to you verbally is basically the first option that you'll eventually see on the form says, I'm basically a regular person and I don't have any significant issues, and I understand that I'm going to have a background check done on me anyway, so I'm checking that one off. The second one says you may, and I believe it emphasizes may, you may have something in your background, and if that's the case, I want you to check off that box. And it goes along further to say that I may discuss it with you, or I may ask you for a background check to be done by BCC, just so I know what we're going into. I don't do that too often, but the form does contain that stuff. So basically, that's where we are about background checks. It's may not, these problems may not apply to everyone, but I do have to have this conversation with everyone. So I'm going to thank you for listening. I'm going to urge you to go look at that form and submit it. And I will say thank you very much. We will move on to other things in the future. Thanks for paying attention. Bye-bye.